Good morning. Thanks for joining me on the Meg Ellison Show. I appreciate you tuning in as always. If you've missed any of the conversations during the course of the 4.5 hours of gold, you can go out to WSIU.com, and all of the conversations are out there for your listening enjoyment to share with others. Joining me this morning from the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, attorney Cory Brewer. Good morning, Cory. How are you?
Good morning, Meg. I'm doing well, thank you.
And I should actually use your appropriate title, which is Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty Education Counsel. And I know that you have a particular focus, and I think in light of, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you and I first met face-to-face at an event, down, I think, in Milwaukee with Riley Gaines, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. Centered around Title IX, which we'll talk about today.
Right, exactly. And that, I mean, you and I were also discussing another matter, and in just talking about freedom of speech and how it seems as if, in the case of what is now happening with the Biden administration and the changes he's making to Title IX, it seems as if there are a different set of rules depending on where you stand on particular issues.
Right. These new Title IX regulations, we think, are not only conflicting with the Title IX law that was passed by Congress, which, by the way, Congress did not change anything, and we can talk a little bit about what the new regulations change, but we think they're unlawful for a number of reasons, and one of them is related to the First Amendment and concerns about compelled speech.
Yeah, and I just it's sort of I'm kind of lost for words, but it's concerning to me because again it sends a chilling message to a conservative, and frankly it seems as if the left has no shame when it comes to their targeting of their political opponents. I mean, the greatest example would be Donald Trump and what he is facing. That I don't know. I've lost count of the number of indictments against him. But if they can go after a former president of the United States, they can go after any of us as well.
I think it will have a chilling effect. And, one of the major changes to these Title IX regulations are that they will change the definition of sex discrimination to include things like sex stereotypes, gender identity. It really kind of turns the intent and purpose of Title IX, which was to create opportunities, protect the well-being, safety of women. It does the opposite of that. Just to be frank, it absolutely does the opposite of that. It's going to take away the safety, the privacy of girls. It will limit their opportunities. You're talking about the political aspect of this. Well, I think here President Biden and his administration are frankly pandering to the most extreme part of their party with this rule because it absolutely harms women and girls. And they say that they've delayed the rulemaking for the athletics part of Title IX, but a lot of legal experts from around the country have analyzed these new regulations and don't really see a way that they don't impact athletics, which is really, really unfortunate as well.
Well, I mean, I guess you say that they don't really see how it's impacting it. I think they choose not to. And I'm still trying to wrap my mind around where all the feminists have gone and why it is that they remain silent on this issue and that they seem to be perfectly content to allow biological males to dominate in women's sports categories and to allow women, I shouldn't even say allow, but to force women to have to share their privacy spaces with biological males. It's it's madness to me. I mean, it's seriously like something you'd see on an episode of The Twilight Zone.
Yeah, I mean, and if the girls want more privacy, who has to leave the girls' locker room and girls' bathrooms? The girls do. They have to leave their own rooms and their own spaces if they want more privacy under these new rules, because they essentially open up the bathrooms, locker rooms, sports teams to a male who identifies as a girl. And it's absolutely going to harm girls. And another thing that I think this administration is doing is they're intentionally pretty vague about a lot of aspects of this, athletics being one of them. They say, no, we delayed the athletics rule. We're still working on that one. But here, Title IX applies to sex discrimination in education activities and extracurriculars. And it's hard to imagine how athletics doesn't fit within that. And they kind of shift the burden to the schools to have the schools figure it out, and are, kind of nudging them in a way to say, well, you better not go against us on this. You have to be inclusive. You have to comply with this new definition of sex discrimination. So if schools want to avoid being sued, if they want to avoid an investigation by the Office of Civil Rights, well, I think, unfortunately, a lot of them are going to feel pressured to have this apply in all of these areas, including athletics. But on that topic, and we can speak more about this, but I want to flag for school board members, for anyone who's kind of in the weeds on this, these new regulations don't go into effect until August 1st. And even then, there's likely to be litigation. So we're going to have to watch this, and it's something that Will is following closely to see what happens in court when the rules are challenged.
I just again, just the facts surrounding a case that you Will has taken up with regard to the 18-year-old biological male in the Sun Prairie
Mm-hmm.
School District, and how it is that those who are calling out this, and I talked with, I don't know if you know who Matt Kittle is, but I talked with him earlier today, and he characterizes this, I mean, not the specific topic, but certainly we could apply it, is this war on reality, Cory. I
Mm.
mean, that's ultimately what it is, that the left can no longer even acknowledge that there are distinct differences between men and women, and
Mm-hmm.
the idea that we have to now argue that point. I mean, it's just, and to think that a young a young girl who, if she is concerned about her safety or privacy, she's intimidated into silence, or she's
Mm.
singled out for speaking out and wanting to defend her privacy and her safety. And then if she does speak out, there are those that would seek to silence her.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, thinking about it from the perspective of girls is, it really is heartbreaking. And we've been seeing more and more people kind of notice these new regulations and want to fight back, which is inspiring. That's one of the reasons Will is here. In Sun Prairie, the family that we worked with, who let us know what was going on in that school district. Sometimes, I mean, Will's here to be an advocate for the rule of law. Again, these new Title IX regulations we think are inconsistent with the rule of law passed by Congress. Um, we want to stand up for those constitutional rights for girls, for their privacy, their safety under the Title IX law that Congress passed. And it is really difficult, I think, for young students now. It's got to be confusing for them. Kids know, and girls, they want their privacy. And mentioning what happened in Sun Prairie, where an 18-year-old male student showered fully undressed next to 4 freshman girls. When you talk to most people just day to day, they know that's not right. Most people know, but for some reason, the Biden administration has just kind of given in to the most extreme part of its party with these new regulations. And they're supposed to be, the party allegedly that is supporting women. And here they're doing the opposite. It it'll be interesting to see what happens in court, I think. And if any parents or grandparents out there are listening, if you know of a child that is harmed because of these new rules, Will is ready to help. We might be able to help, so please do reach out, because that's how we're going to make changes, by fighting back.
In the effort, and I think you talk about the or you just referenced the party that uh, claims to be the advocate for, I don't know, all these special interest groups, or they refer to themselves as progressive. There's no progress in taking away opportunities from girls and women. There's no progress in preventing women and girls from having safe and private spaces in society. And there isn't a better example of how this is not going to affect men, because there isn't an influx of biological women that are transgender athletes. Although I will use as an example this so-called transgender boxer. This is a woman who transitioned to a man, and she was knocked out by a man, a biological male, in 21 seconds in a boxing match just recently. And to think that women are ever going to be able to defend ourselves against this mentality that somehow we're supposed to deny reality, that a biological male should be permitted to compete against women and should be allowed to undress in front of women and girls and should be using the same spaces as women and girls. If we do not persist and continue to push back, they will continue to, well, I would say regress, because there's nothing progressive about what they are proposing or what they are trying to accomplish.
Right. Yes. I mean, Title IX is a law that now is over 50 years old when it was drafted. And until recently, the word sex meant male and female. That was what it was understood to mean. Everyone essentially knew the intent was to protect opportunities and the well-being, the safety, privacy of women in educational activities. And what we're seeing now is just absolutely turning that on its head. And the number of facets of educational activities that this could impact, it's a serious concern. And one thing we didn't even get to yet is that they're also changing the definition of sexual harassment. So lowering the bar for what could be considered sexual harassment. Others have talked about concerns that will it be considered sexual harassment to not use the preferred pronouns of a classmate? Are they going to enforce it in such a way that would be sexual harassment? There's just a number of concerns here. We think it's bad law, bad policy, and it's really unfortunate that these regulations now are final, and will soon be published in the Federal Register before they go into effect before the next school year, unless they get enjoined by a court.
Yeah, it really says a lot about those on the left, and I would say both men and women, and I'm talking the biological ones that are somehow defending this or justifying this. I mean, I was really, I don't know, I guess it was very eye-opening. I can't say there's much that shocks me, but it was very eye-opening to sit during the bills that the Republican legislators proposed that would have protected women and girls in Wisconsin, and to hear, it's one thing to hear what's his name, that Dave Considine, say that girls should just try harder, and that's the solution that he offers. But then to hear women actually, I think in a very disrespectful way, discounting what those who are attempting to defend and protect women and girls in sports and in private spaces, that that these women, these Democrat legislators, would actually ridicule and dismiss whatever concerns that they had expressed about
Mhm.
why it is that we need, well, first of all, why it is that we need this legislation to protect women and girls in Wisconsin.
Right. I haven't really been able to wrap my head around why women would ever support these new Title IX regulations. I don't know if they don't understand them or if they think they're being kind and inclusive in some way. Um, but we've talked about this before, Meg. No one wants to have a conversation about what this means for girls. They don't want to talk about that because it's so evident, I think, that it's going to harm them. And, you know, anything like this, you also have to consider, is this going to be abused? Are there going to be boys that will take advantage of this? And I don't think that's out of the question. And frankly, it's really, really concerning. These new regulations are totally out of step with the majority of Wisconsinites, the majority of Americans. If you look at polling on this issue, it people know. They know that there's a reason why girls and boys bathrooms, locker rooms, sports are separate. They understand this. And now we have our federal government, the Biden administration, just doing a complete 180 on Title IX in a way that's going to harm, first of all, we want to respect all students, but these new regulations in particular are going to harm women and girls.
Well, and what does it say about, I talked about Democrat women, but what does it say about Democrat men that they're unwilling to acknowledge that they they believe, or evidently, they don't believe it's necessary to protect women and girls, and I question the motives of a Democrat man. Well, I guess you could debate that man title, but I question the motives of someone who is unwilling to acknowledge that women and girls should the safety and security and privacy of women and girls should be a priority, and for these Democrat so-called men to argue against it, it really, again, I guess I can't say shocking, but it's very telling about the
Mhm.
individuals.
Mhm. And you wonder too, is it going to take something that, maybe their daughter loses out on a scholarship or playing time or an academic award because a boy was allowed to compete in her category. Maybe she doesn't feel like she has privacy in her locker room because a boy is allowed to be in her locker room. And is it going to take something like that where all of a sudden it's your daughter, your granddaughter experiencing the impact of these harmful regulations to see what really how harmful they are? Anyone who's had a daughter play sports, who has been a female athlete themselves, it is hard work. The amount of dedication and time put into these things is not insignificant. And by the way, it improves character and so many skills throughout your life. So now to open up these female categories to boys and men who either say they are females or identify as females, whatever it might be, um, these girls are going to lose out on opportunities. It's going to be so discouraging. I played sports in college. I have 3 little girls myself. I want them to have the same opportunities as I did and as women have had for 50 years now. And we're going backwards. This is a huge step back.
Cory Brewer, I want to ask you quickly. You talked about extending help to those that might have a family member, whether it's a child or a grandchild, that is encountering something like this. What's the information that they need to reach out to Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty?
Yes, you can contact us directly from our website, will-law.org, and we might be able to help. We're also working on an FAQ to explain what these regulations are. They're over 1,500 pages long, so it won't be immediate, but we're working on a document that will be publicly available with more information. But yeah, I mean, we really are we're really interested in fighting back against these. So if there are families out there, reach out to us. We might be able to help.
Cory Brewer, I appreciate you joining me. She's at Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty Education Counsel.